All right, ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for the Samurai Spoken Word? This is kind of a different take on the Samurai Spoken Word. Usually we have 5 or 6 performers getting up here with diverse styles, but this time we're doing the Samurai Spotlight. 2 performers. What, hour-long sets? How long are you guys going?
I'm talking out of my ass, so I'm not real sure.
All right, so.
I had cauliflower.
It's going to be a little bit longer set. One thing we do want to mention before we get started, the Samurai Spoken Word is intended for mature audience, so parental discretion is advised. And be glad I'm not out here. I think I'm next month, so.
You're intended for immature audiences.
Honestly, yeah.
With no discretion.
Absolutely no discretion. Well, without further ado, all the talent get on stage. So please welcome Ephemily.
Good evening, everybody. First off, I would like to say it is difficult to remain somewhat ladylike in a pencil skirt when getting up on stage, for what it's worth. I spent the entire afternoon in this fever of trying to decide what I wanted to talk about tonight, and that involved a whole lot of anger, printing, and highlighting. I had come up with this idea of I am a fuddy-duddy because I have developed the 5 W's of being an old person who wants to spray the kids on their lawn and tell them to, get off my lawn. And it involves things like, who, what, when, where, how, why. Things like, who the frick finds Here Comes Honey Boo Boo entertaining? And why on earth do we want people telling us this, that, and the other thing politically, and how the hell did I get 13 Republicans in my vagina? I mean, statistically, and I was coming up with this kind of stuff, statistically a woman my age has had 7 sexual partners. Thanks to the Republicans, I think that number is now skewed, because they're up in my business, and a whole lot of women's business. And the more I thought about this, and the more ink I went through, the farther up my panties creeped, to the point where I don't think we could have hired the Mounties to find them. They were that far north. It was a cranky afternoon at work as I'm reading through this stuff, because one article led to another, and another outrage, and this, that, and the other thing. And I think I finally gave up on the idea that I was going to talk about current events. So,
Yeah, that's my job.
yeah. Well, there's plenty to talk about, that's for sure, but I don't really want to be on blood pressure medications, and I don't think there's quite enough profanity in the word to express my frustrations with the election this year. So, instead, I think I'm just going to talk about what it was like to grow up. Or rather, age chronologically, because I'm not really sure if I've grown up yet or not. I see a whole lot of this out in the audience. So, before we get too far in, I want to say, Internet, it's not a good day. I don't think I'm going to bang you tonight, because I'm tired. I'm worn out from researching shit that pissed me off. So, can we just cuddle? Is that okay? For those of you who didn't know, we do make it a habit of all of our Samurai shows. We do try to get live on the internet one way or another. So, how about everybody in the house say hello to the internet? Hello! Yay! Do you feel good? Okay, good.
I think you were using the other microphone.
Well, here's the thing. This is the house mic. This is the internet mic. I'm banging the internet. So, God, I'm tired. So let's talk about growing up. I know I've told a few stories. Some of you know that I'm a rescue human, meaning that I was adopted, which is why I am so passionate about rescue animals. And I know I had a set about the Humane Society and that sort of thing. So, which is another reason why this particular political climate kind of gets me up in arms, because I was unplanned. And I'm fully aware of that. My biological mother She didn't tell a soul, and it's kind of a sport. There's two pastimes in the house when we get really, really bored. There's the, what breed of dog could Moxie be? Because I've got this mixed breed that's got about 17 different things that she could possibly be. And then there's the whole, what groupie, or what band could my biological mother have been a groupie for? That's equally entertaining, because you see, the history that I know of my origins is that my biological mother was something like 21, 22. She was from a small town. I was actually born in Albion, Nebraska. And she didn't tell a soul. I know, I don't know how I can atone for that, other than the fact that I was adopted here in Omaha, which is only marginally better, depending on who you talk to. She never told a soul that she was pregnant. So when people ask me, are you going to try and find your biological family? I'll say, yeah, I'm not really sure if I want to go back 30 plus some years later and go, surprise, Grandma! You've been a grandma for 30 some years. Yeah, I don't think I could have that heart attack on my conscience, quite frankly. So, but she never told a soul, and from what I understand is that she was actually a construction worker. She was the lady who stood out there with the slow sign on road crews. So, but what we do know is that my biological father was 21 or 22, relatively tall, had some musical ability and some college education, and was in a band of some sort. The entertaining bit of information about this is that close to about the time when we are assuming I was conceived, there were two somewhat famous musical groups that passed through the area. There was KISS in Lincoln and the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. I realize I'm wearing heavy makeup and my tongue is awfully small, that's all I got. So for what it's worth. Another interesting, well, huh?
That means it was Ace.
Growing up, let's see here, as a baby, what was really interesting is that I was quite a quiet child. Now, I realize for those of you who have spent any time with me in public or in person off of a stage, this is really difficult to believe. But as a baby, I was very quiet. I slept through the night, all those abnormal things that babies are not supposed to do. And I don't remember how long it was after my parents brought me home, which is another story. I think it was 2 months after my birth, my adoptive parents got the phone call from the Nebraska Children's Home Society saying, hey, so you're on the list and you wanted a baby, right? Of course we are. Yes, we'd love to have a baby. How's tomorrow? Oh, shit. They had nothing. They had no crib. They had no car seat. They had no bottles, no formula, nothing. And this, to give you an idea, if you're Omaha natives, anybody remember Sophia Morris Paint? That would be my family. I am the paint lady. So they were, and they tell me this literally, they were late for the opera that night because of the phone call. And it was, I believe, intermission when they were allowed into their actual seats rather than standing in the back of the music hall watching the performance. And my grandparents, Nana and Poppy, were sitting there saying, what happened? What held you up? They said, you're going to be grandparents! So that is where my grandparents learned that, they were going to have a little baby girl in their life to spoil rotten. And boy, did they ever. But, where was I? Okay, yeah, quiet baby, yes, sleeping through the night. I don't remember exactly how old I was when we discovered this. And it seems that the ironic part about this is that I was actually deaf as a child. We came to discover the reason for it was the pediatrician at the Nebraska Children's Home Society actually didn't do the standard hearing test that they do on all infants. Now, what I find so ironic about this is that the pediatrician's name was actually Dr. Wax. The irony is not lost on me. So, as a child, I went through a lot of hearing tests. And I think my most recent memory of that was they gave me this hearing test where I don't know if any of you have had one of these where you sit in a soundproof room and you have these god-awful, over-the-ear, bright orange, like almost hunting, like shooting range headset on, and they play these shrieking tones or these low tones, and they say, okay, well, raise your hand when you can hear out of whichever side. And I got so fed up with these that this particular test, I remember after we were over, can we go watch Bambi now? So I got tired of them, and oddly enough, they decided that I needed to have an IQ test because they didn't know if my biological mom got any kind of prenatal care, and that was why I was put into the honors program. Surprisingly, I was a bit of a handful in that I was hard of hearing and smart and a troublemaker. So you do not do anything for helping me keep my ego contained. You've seen the car I have to fit it into on the way home, right? It's the size of a shoebox. So, as a child, I remember I had a gym teacher that once told me that she was going to keep every scrap that I ever wrote on because I was going to be president. And I worked for a help desk, a government help desk. What went wrong? But 6th grade rolled around, and I went toe-to-toe with a 30-something-year-old man who decided that he and I were mortal enemies. And I'm thinking, how funny is this, that this is a grown man with a degree, a career, and an education who's picking fights with, let's see, I was 4 when I started school, so in 6th grade that would have made me how old? I don't know, I can't count on my fingers. Younger than the rest of them. I was the youngest one in my class, and all of a sudden the 6th grade teacher decides that I was his project. Later on it came out that he transferred on to another Millard school and was, he got into trouble for basically hoisting another student up by the collars and slamming them into a locker because of their behavior. So the fact that we went toe-to-toe on this was kind of interesting. But eventually he somehow convinced my parents to send me to therapy at like 10. And I remember staring down that particular therapist going, I'm not even going to talk to you. You're not worth my time. So had I been born a man, I think I would have had very large balls. Very large. In something like, I believe it was 1989, my parents had had enough of me. They says, all right, kid, you're a pain. We're sending you to military camp. And they did. I went to Culver Military Academy after term school didn't work. I'm not kidding. In the last show, I gave my review of the book, White Gloves and Party Manners. That didn't help. Yeah, I could dance a mean foxtrot, but when I stepped on somebody's toes, they knew it. I've always been a bit of a klutz. But yeah, they sent me through kiddie boot camp before kiddie boot camp was cool. And to this day, my camp counselor from when I was, 11, 12 years old, 1989, she still not only remembers me, but remembers my middle name. Because she had to use it an awful lot. Those of you who have been in trouble with your parents, you know that if they bust out the middle name, they mean business. I had a camp counselor she used it a lot that summer. Actually, all 3 summers, because apparently it didn't take the first time. But I've always been a bit different for many reasons, some of which I can't control. But growing up, like I said, I was adopted. So that was kind of a strike against me, so to speak, based on my peers' perception. They would say, ha, your parents didn't want you. And they liked to tease me about that till they came over. Now, those of you who know about Surfer Morse Paint, you know that it was a somewhat large paint company here in the Omaha area. Well, it was more than that. It was actually a regional paint company. So we had stores in several states. And I am that brat that when I was a kid, I asked for a horse and I got one. So yeah, I got my pony. And I was very fortunate in that my parents were pretty well off, but I was not quite smart enough to put that together to realize that this gigantic house we were living in was any different than anybody else's house. So while I was an idiot in that regard, my friends would come over and they would see this house and ask for a map. And then they would see the pool in the backyard and the pool table downstairs and the big screen above the garage that we joked was my own separate wing. Well, it wasn't so much a joke. So my friends would tease me about how, oh, well, your parents just didn't want you. Then they'd come over and promptly swap and say, do your kids want me, or do your parents want any more kids? Because I'd like to volunteer for this. Is there a draft? So in that regard, I suppose, yeah, it was a little different in that because I didn't have that idea of what it was like to be genetically related to your family. Because I've got myself and my little sister, who's 5 years my junior, she's also adopted. And to see us, you will know that I am either the milkman's child or somebody's adopted, because my father is, well, he's the sofer of the family, and my mom is this little firecracker of a woman who's maybe this big and just a little pit bull, 5 foot tall, or 5'2" tall pit bull, that have a friend jokes that Ernie Chambers would cross the street rather than pass her on the sidewalk, which is true because they were both on the learning community for the Omaha Public Schools, and I have no doubt that eventually that would have happened. But, so I had that growing up. I also had the fact that my family was Jewish, and I went into a very small elementary school, Ponk Elementary, those of you who may be familiar. It is the smallest public school elementary in OPS, and yet it has the largest playground, for which is the source of many of my scars, because you see I have 2 left feet and I am all thumbs. So it was interesting being the only kid that got out of school for Rosh Hashanah or various other holidays. So, and I joke about that to this day, that I am an invitation-only Jew, meaning that I only am Jewish if I get an invitation, or if it gets me out of school, or work, or gets me a gift. So, but yeah, that was always interesting because I had a lot of people that would pick my brain about it, and I truly didn't learn about Christmas and that sort of thing until probably high school, when I finally cornered a friend of mine that was well-versed in the Christmas story, and I says, okay, look, what's this shit I keep hearing about virgin birth? I have been through the OPS version of health ed or sex ed, and there was nothing in the coloring book. I did not color those pieces, so give me a clue here. And so that was an interesting childhood piece there as well. But what was even more interesting was growing up in the Jewish community, because you see, I grew up out by Hummel Park, and my complexion frequently got me the title of being one of the escaped albinos. Those of you may be unfamiliar with Hummel Park, there is an urban legend in Omaha that there is an albino farm out in the area, and yeah, I'm one of the escapees. Now let me tell you, growing up out in the Hummel Park area, it's interesting around Halloween because you can always tell when somebody's creeping up 34th Street and they're trying to scare the pants off their girlfriend, literally. So I will admit to not necessarily being one of those girls that had their pants scared off. I will be one of those jerks that drove around trying to scare people around Halloween, which is even better because that's about when my birthday is. Mine is 6 days prior to Halloween, and so every year I try and have some kind of fun celebration that brings in a little bit of the macabre, a little bit of the dark, and okay, I like it. It's an excuse to dress up in crazy clothing, as if I don't have that on a day-to-day basis. But you weren't going to say anything? All right, I will. Let's see what else here. So my peers in Hebrew school, they were all from the western part of Omaha and had this idea that nobody from North Omaha could possibly be up to snuff. And so I was the subject of quite a bit of bullying. So I take bullying very personal, not personally, but I take it to heart, and I really want to do a lot, if I can, to stop that in our schools and in our young people's lives. Because I remember being pulled aside by my female peers and drugged into the bathroom at synagogue and basically interrogated. I mean, I'm pretty sure people in Gitmo have it easier than what these little brats did to me. They would say, well, how much did your daddy make? Well, how big is your house? How big is your room? I'm like, oh, you have to bring us pictures before we'll even talk to you and stuff. And I just got really sick of it. It got to the point where I would throw tantrums with my folks and say, look, this is what's happening at school. I get there late because I'm coming from twice as far away as all of my peers. So they never see me show up in the nicer cars or that sort of thing. And so therefore they just assume that the North Omaha Jew has to be destitute, we're from the hood. Okay, no, actually I'm on the hill overlooking the hood, but whatever. And I don't say it to brag, but it's just like, your daddy's Beamer and my daddy's Porsche. Can we just all get along, please? So it finally took them demanding that I bring in a picture of my house, my room, my daddy's car, and some numbers as far as what my daddy took home per year for them to finally accept me. And I did, and it was only when they realized that my living room could have probably fit their entire house that they realized that perhaps I could be one of the cool kids. To which I gave them a resounding. So I complied with their wishes and pretty much told them to shove it, and that's kind of where I am even to this day. But those of you who know anything about how to keep kosher, I don't. I really like bacon. I really like bacon.
Try some cheese, deep fried.
Yes. What was really extra funny about my bat mitzvah was that this is where I started being an invitation-only Jew at the tender age of, I believe, 12, because this was prior to my 13th birthday, by about 5 days when I was actually bat mitzvah. I had been resisting spending any time learning my lessons because, I was the black sheep, so to speak. A very familiar position for myself, but in this way uncomfortable. And I was resisting it, saying, I really can't stand this. My peers are bullies, and I don't particularly believe, because as a child, I had stopped really having faith over a really stupid reason. But if you care, I can explain it to you, what kind of kept me from...
Was it bacon?
No, it really wasn't bacon, unfortunately, because growing up, there was never any limit on it. My mom would make up the bagels, the cream cheese, and the bacon on Sunday morning, and yeah. A lifelong bond was formed between bacon and my ass. As a kid, I had attended a Purim festival, actually, and it's a goofy festival that I don't think even most Jews know about, but one of the things was a carnival, and of course no carnival is complete without the Winnig Goldfish, a tragic pet contest, and somehow I took this goldfish home, and within 48 hours, it was white, bloated, and floating belly up. And I was a bit devastated. So I went to my rabbi and I says, Rabbi, can you talk to God for me and tell him, please, I really hope that my fish's soul is okay up in heaven. And he turned to me, he says, well, why don't you do it? Okay. Interesting. What's wrong with you doing it, man? You've got the hotline. I'm going to have to go to the switchboard. So that kind of made me sit up and think, and it gave me an idea that maybe it's not a bad thing to question everything around you. And I've been doing it ever since, to the irritation of most everybody within a 50-mile radius. So, but when it came time for my bat mitzvah, I joke that it was a peace treaty with my family. It truly was, because I said to them, I says, guys, I don't want to do this. I'm going to do this for you. And they says, no. This is really for you. I says, no, you don't understand. I could care less. And I struck a deal with them. I says, look, all right, here's the story. If I do this, I'm going to do this for you guys. And we're going to agree that I never have to step foot in this particular place again unless it is for something like a wedding or funeral. Deal? And they kind of mulled it over and they says, well, okay, we really think that you're going to rethink this later, but let's do it. And the handshake deal with a 12-year-old child was struck. And it was up to me where I wanted to have the after party. Now, I don't know how many of you have any children who have Jewish friends or who may have ever attended a bar or bat mitzvah, but usually after the festivities, there is some sort of crazy pre-teen dance party with a DJ and that sort of thing. It was very common for my peers to have theirs at the Highland Country Club, which was the former incarnation of Ironwood, which was the former incarnation of a very large hole in the ground at 132nd and Pacific. I also find it quite funny that that's where I got married, and I'm now divorced, so that hole in the ground has multiple meanings for me. But rather than...
You feel a deep connection with it?
Yes. Yeah. This is why we bring you along, Alan.
Let's let you have the worst joke.
No, all right. So, yeah, at 12 years of age, I said, okay, we're going to do this for you guys, and then I'm never going to have to come back. And in my preteen mind, I decided that it would be absolutely awesome to have my party at a barbecue place. Think about it for a second. What do you usually barbecue? Exactly. So we had to be very specific with the kitchen staff about what was going to be on the menu. I think we had a lot of negative RSVPs for that very reason, because I'm pretty sure that they knew I was trying to thumb my nose at them at 12 years of age. But it was late October when this particular party was, and we all know what the weather's like in late October, correct? Remember that big old snowstorm? This was several years previously, so the barbecue joint that we had this particular festivity at is the one that is out on McKinley Road in extreme North Omaha. Fantastic barbecue. It is also known as the Log Cabin Place, which is quite small. So when you have invited 75 of your closest enemies, there's not a lot of room for everybody. So you know what our solution was? We got a tent. Late October, bitterly cold rain. So here we are in our hammer pants, because that was the fashion. No, let me paint this a little bit more. Hammer pants, bolo ties, and button covers were the fashion accessory of the year. I had all three. Oh yes, mall bangs, bleached blonde hair. It was a hot mess.
We know there are pictures.
Yes, there are, and they are posted on Facebook, because I have no shame. And I'm sure the internet, okay, if you're my Facebook friend, go take a look at Fashion Disasters from 1977 to present. That's the album. For everybody else out there, feel free to request it. They're terrible, and I can guarantee that you will feel better about yourselves. Included in this...
My page tomorrow.
Yes, they will. Yes. Notice the lack of projector. There is also a photo in there from my freshman year homecoming, I believe, that involves a Parker Lewis Can't Lose dress suit
Oh my God.
and a rhinestone tie. I have never made fantastic fashion choices. So, there's still some debate there. I am frequently accused of wearing, I like girls' shoes. So I'm hoping that I did quite well tonight. So, but yes, my teenage years, I don't know that I was so much a rebel, so much as just really awkward and oblivious to that fact. Because I know a lot of girls, they spend a lot of time around other girls, and they do each other's hair and makeup, and they swap clothes and that sort of thing. And this concept mystified me. Totally mystified me. And being plus size before plus size was cool, I didn't have a lot of opportunity to swap clothing with my teenage friends. So a lot of my fashion choices were pretty much me walking into the store, finding something that the staff tried to hide for the love of God, and deciding, this is really awesome. I'm going to wear these snakeskin pants and peasant top together. So, yeah, and they were jeans, actually. They were 5-pocket snakeskin pattern jeans. Yeah, screw up your face. I wore them a lot. Oh yeah, I managed to find the craziest stuff at, the snobbiest of stores. So I looked through my yearbooks and I realized I was not a trendsetter. I was just an idiot. Holy shit, what girl wears suspenders? I mean, come on. I only came to find out later after high school that my best friend at the time had to field a lot of questions about which gender I preferred, simply because I had some crazy outfits, and I dated a guy from another high school, so most of my peers never saw me with guys. They never saw me with women either, so they had a whole lot of questions going on there. And it wasn't really until my 30s that I discovered not only it's an awful lot of fun to be me, but exactly how far I bucked the trend. I mean, I think if I was the bull, I'd have bucked one of those riders off and we'd still be waiting for it to come down. So, and it's not so much that I try, it's just it sort of happens that way. And I think I kind of like it. And in my 30s it happened that I discovered that I have got another voice, and it's not one of those schizophrenia hallucinations, because it doesn't tell me to, eat babies or smother my mother in her sleep or vote Republican. So, that's kind of where I found this other personality called Ephemily, and I know some of you have been here to hear about the birth of her, and she's kind of that other voice that I think we all pretty much have. And she's that aspect of my personality that I have to shut up an awful lot, and I'm pretty sure that everybody has that. And I like her a lot. I've got a bit on the blog, which I've got some cards out here that discuss my writing and how you can get in touch with me, and pretty much I use the internet as a cheap form of therapy, because otherwise I would pretty much be responsible for the death of several acres in South America as far as deforestation, because I keep an awful lot of journals. And those of you who have spent any time on my Twitter feed or my Facebook or anything like that realize that I will fill up a feed like nobody's business. And I frequently get people telling me, your stuff is so hilarious. I read it to my kids. I'm thinking, oh God. I'm not responsible for those therapy bills. I just sign this right here, please. But I really do use it as sort of a steam valve for some of the stuff that goes on in my head. And I really credit my discovering and naming this Ephemily aspect of my character. Now, I realize a lot of people, they have squinted at my license plates, and more than once I've had somebody stop, roll down their window in traffic and signal to me and go, what the hell does your license plate mean? I don't get it. And I'll have to explain it to them. And I actually have an upstairs neighbor in my apartment building. He says, yeah, I had no idea what it meant, so I Googled it. And I went, I'm so sorry. Because the first 10 pages are all me. And he still talks to me, actually, so this is a good thing. But Ephemily is kind of, it's a portmanteau of a couple of words. It's ephemeral, meaning temporary or transient, and feminine, and the female name Emily. And it's kind of the sum of all the parts that I think make up my life. It is, I've always felt like this big, massive tree with a very shallow.
Some people desperately wanted this show.
I guess. Just knocking down the walls. What's going on? I'm bringing down the house. I apologize. This is my reality distortion field right here. Steve Jobs had one. I have one too. I'll wrap with what Ephemily truly is. It is a portmanteau between ephemeral, which is transient, and temporary, feminine, which I discovered later in life that I really do have a girl card. It was just hiding behind my tomboy membership. And Emily, which it was really just sort of a handy way to feminize the word. But I have always felt as if I were this massive, massive tree. and I don't have a whole lot of deep roots being adopted and having had a lot of upheaval in life. And I'm finding that I'm actually quite fine with that. So I encourage people to get in touch with that other aspect of their personality. I've known several of my friends to have done it. And in a way, it's a little bit liberating, and I really like it. So that's why I'm up here. So thank you. You're all my shrinks for this evening. If you should want to send me a bill, I might be able to get you a Bud Light or something. So, hey man, it's all I can afford, all right? That's a lot of Bud Light.
All right, give it up once again for Ephemily. All right, we're going to give you about 10 minutes to cleanse your palate, and we're going to figure out what the fuck that was back there. So we'll take about 10-minute break and come back. We'll hear some more stories.
Totally brought down the house. Yeah.
Just massively struggling. That's where earthquakes are in California.
Shoot for the moon. Yeah. But it broke there, and the guy fell down. I seriously, I put a shit out of this stuff. And then I forgot my notes. Is it totally gone?
It's not totally going, it's just someone's coming in and out.
That's weird. It might have been that I was stepping away from the mic and kind of facing with it.
Could be. Knowing me, I'll just have to speak really loud.
Because you have so much trouble with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's different stuff.
Try to, nail my feet to the floor, and then I'm still gonna.
You and Rocco.
Yeah.
And Mikey.
I already had enough nails to your feet in the last few weeks.
Yes. No, I'm sure there'll be another Jew joke in there somewhere. Yeah, I went there. Yeah. Yeah, warm full moon, not so good.
And warm beer in general.
Yeah.
IPAs and stouts are probably more. Except for stouts. Stouts need to be warm.
That's true. Well, not warm. Room temperature.
Oh, not warm, but yeah. Not freezing.
Not liking it much. Yeah, I'm starting to notice that I'm getting distracted.
Yeah. I was thinking out
I told him about it, and I said, where's that?
oh, great, you walked right there.
I don't even want to go.
Yeah, they went through.